The WWE Network. Boy, do I have a few things I want to say about this. Now, I am not a subscriber to the WWE Network. I don't plan on paying the $9.99 a month for it. Though I will, however, say that I do believe that is a bargain for the content that it has, both archived and what they're offering to you in new content, be it pay-per-views, new specially produced shows, etc., etc. No denying it's not worth it. No denying that it is worth the money. But there's a number of things from that I see as particularly problematic, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, because this is going to turn into something that, if it catches on, could fuck over the performers themselves significantly, but we'll see where that goes from there. So, the WWE basically created a network here where you can get their content streamed to your phone, your iPad, your personal computer, your television, your PlayStation, your Xbox, etc., etc. And it's going to carry all their live programs, all their pay-per-views, their Raws, their SmackDowns, their NXT episodes, and Superstars, etc., etc. And you get it for $9.95 or $9.99, whatever, a month, and you don't have to pay $50, for a pay-per-view every month, which I think is, ridiculous to have to pay for that much for a fucking pay-per-view. And WWE's trying to remedy all that and get more people to go into a paying service, because if it's a minimal cost of, just $10 a month, you figure you would get more people to pay that than there would be to pay, $50, $60 for a pay-per-view every month. And might just, give up, paying their cable bills or whatever. Who knows? Anyway, it's very interesting. But as I said, there's a number of negatives that I can see coming from this. One of which is that pay-per-view buy rates and television ratings, they don't mean anything anymore. Like, it really doesn't matter what the ratings are. Now, it matters to the advertisers on something like, an episode of WWE Raw, or whoever, is sponsoring SmackDown or anything like that. And that in turn is gonna just change the whole dynamics of the game of how things are looked upon, because it could get to a point where Raw gets a 1.0 TV rating and TNA gets a 1.1. TNA can claim to be, oh, we're the #1 wrestling show on television. They can literally say that, and they would be correct in saying that, because the TV ratings would say so, when in reality much more people are watching Monday Night Raw. Now, frankly, I don't give a shit who wants to claim the rights of being the most watched show on television or anything like that, but it is interesting that we're now going into this era where wrestling used to be just so just obsessed with television ratings, and the Monday Night War between WCW Nitro and WWF Monday Night Raw, just for year after year of just lock and step competition, to where WCW pulled away for 80-some months, and then WWE trounced them to the point that WCW went out of business. And pay-per-view buy rates. Now, going into pay-per-view buy rates, this is something that is going to significantly hurt the wrestlers, because there's a lot of wrestlers that have contracts structured based on bonuses being given out based on pay-per-view buys. Now, with people getting the service now that can get on their computer for $9.99 a month, who the fuck is going to buy the pay-per-view for $50, $60? I think Dish Network already, I think they didn't carry the last Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, if I remember correctly. And I don't blame them. Pay-per-view companies are probably going to stop carrying WWE pay-per-views just altogether. And, I wouldn't blame them if they did, because one of the things that Vince McMahon and the executive team at WWE is trying to do is thumb their nose at the companies, the pay-per-view companies, that, frankly, and I've heard Vince McMahon was in an interview with Howard Stern some years ago, where he was saying, sometimes you see less than a 50-50 split from the pay-per-view companies for the content that you make for them. Now, as to whether or not that's fair, it's up to your interpretation. If you think that for every $100 worth of pay-per-views that you sell, that the cable company gets $50 of it or potentially more, then, you know, whatever. That's, like I said, that's up to your arbitrary standards of deciphering whether or not that's fair. But the whole thing of the wrestlers getting paid bonuses on certain pay-per-views, and CM Punk, supposedly, that's one of the reasons why he left the company, because it was still up in the air what the payment scale was going to be like for wrestlers, because there's a number of wrestlers that, you know, relied on that WrestleMania payday bonus, because it was always just a, you know, a lot more wealthy of a bonus, obviously, since that pay-per-view sells a lot more, you know, pay-per-view buys. And it's interesting that Triple H is supposedly, you know, one of the big minds behind the scenes here now, and that something like this comes forth. I make no bones about it. I hate Triple H. I had no problem with him as a performer, watching him in the Attitude Era or anything like that. But he always came off to me as someone who could never really make the lesser guy on the card bigger. Much like it almost seemed like every single time Triple H got over in a big match, it was because the other guy was bigger than him. Whether it was facing The Rock, whether it was facing Stone Cold, whether it was facing The Undertaker in his 2 WrestleMania matches, or whether it was him being the second fiddle to HBK into Generation X. And he's a guy that was at the right place at the right time as far as I'm concerned. And to know that he's going to be, you know, phasing out his role as an active wrestler, and him being one of the creative minds behind WWE right now, and being one of the main money earners from an executive level in the company, to going to be one of the top money earners once Vince McMahon fully steps down and leaves the company. To know that he is going to be one of the people that benefit off of this WWE network, it bothers me. It really does bother me, because again, he was always that guy. Like, you know, they would try to put him in like, you know, like matches against Shelton Benjamin, and put him in a main event against Chris Jericho at WrestleMania, against Booker T at WrestleMania. And like, those matches were forgotten about. Remember the main event he had against Randy Orton at WrestleMania? Yeah, you probably don't remember that either. So neither does half the wrestling world. He's had main events that were just forgettable, unless the guy he was facing was bigger than him, like an Undertaker. Anyway, to know that this guy, this fucking guy of all people, is going to be one of the guys that is going to benefit off of something that I feel is honestly going to be a tremendous success. Because like I said, what are you going to do when WrestleMania comes around? You going to spend $60 to your cable company? Or are you going to buy the app? Even if you buy the app and cancel it, or buy the service, whatever you want to call it, you know, depending on what you get on your phone or your computer, even if you cancel it, it's less money than what you'd pay for WrestleMania, because it's a 6-month minimal commitment. So that's $60, $59.50 if you want to get exact. You know, the pay-per-view, you get it $60 minimum. You get it in HD, I think it's $65 or something like that. Then you have like these extra fees that your cable company tax on and shit like that. It ends up being closer to $75 in the grand scheme of things. I mean, what are you going to do? Like who would fucking buy WrestleMania through your cable company? I mean, you really have to be just thick to really buy that. But people will. People are still going to stick with, you know, what they've used for years, and, you know, all right, you know, have at it. Maybe people have just $70 to burn and don't really care about it. So, you know what? Who am I to tell them they're thick? Anyway, it's just that this is something that I really don't see benefiting the wrestlers all that much, unless this becomes really super hyper popular and it turns out to be a thing that transcends television. Because if it gets to the point that it's so popular that instead of getting, you know, 4 or 5 million people watching Monday Night Raw each week, it turns into, like, you know, 10+ million people, then it's like, oh wow, this gamble really paid off and then some. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. But again, it's like, our contract's going to get restructured to get some sort of revenue, because I doubt anyone has a contract. Well, everyone's contract was pretty much locked up before the WWE Network even existed. So it makes you wonder, like how bad are the actual performers themselves going to be hurt by this, and how much are the pockets of the fucking executives like Triple H, Vince, and Stephanie going to get lined? I mean, my God, they already have more money than God himself, if God had money and did exist. But anyway, it's a whole different thing. Anyway, yeah, I think this is beyond interesting. It's as someone who's not that much of a wrestling fan anymore, I still do follow the news of wrestling and find the industry still interesting to this day. And this is something that is just, really going to change the entire industry forever. Like I said, we could have in a few months down the road someone like TNA getting a 1.1 rating and saying, hey, we're the #1 most watched wrestling show. We're beating WWE Raw in the ratings. And it, like I said, won't mean anything, because that WWE Network now changed the entire game. I don't know. What do you guys think about the WWE Network? Those of you that are wrestling fans out there, do you think it's really a good idea? Do you think it's going to hurt or benefit the wrestlers? Is it going to just, turn more eyes to the product now that, you don't have to pay $50+ for a pay-per-view? Again, I personally think it was a great move by WWE. It just bothers me to know how much the executives at the top are going to profit. But then again, such is capitalism. Have a great day, everyone.